BBC One's Christmas package includes Terence Rattigan's The Browning version, starring Judi Dench and Ian Holm as the schoolmaster with a failed marriage.
Line 1399, begin.
The bloody corpse of the husband you have slain.
Tableau, I presume you're using a different text to mine.
Translator's license, sir. More exciting. After all, she did kill her husband, sir.
Well, do we get it?
Get what?
The pension, of course. Do we get it?
No.
Doesn't the marriage service say something about the husband supporting the wife, doesn't it? You ought to know.
I thought I'd come back and wish you luck, sir.
Thank you, Tableau. That's good of you.
I thought this might interest you, sir. It's for you, sir.
What is it?
Verse translation of the Agamemnon, sir. The Browning version. I've written in it.
Ian Holm stars in Terence Rattigan's The Browning version at 9:20 tonight on BBC One.
In 15 minutes, EastEnders, and that's after the news.
A row over the New Year's honours. Mrs Thatcher's image builder is knighted. But there's no award for Bob Geldof. Politicians and aid workers have been asking why Bob Geldof's name isn't among the 650 published today in the New Year's honours list. The word from Downing Street this evening is that the honours are given for services to Britain and the Commonwealth. Bob Geldof's fundraising for Africa wouldn't normally qualify. But some opposition MPs aren't satisfied and contrast it with the honour given to Gordon Rees, the man who advised Mrs Thatcher on her public image.
Gordon Rees, who helped Mrs Thatcher win 2 general elections, is rewarded with a knighthood. A former publicity director at Conservative Central Office, he's credited with creating the new Thatcher image, the softer hairstyle and lower voice. But Labour MP Robin Cook has described the award as an outrage. He said Mrs Thatcher confuses political usefulness to herself with political service to the nation. Others are angry that Bob Geldof, who created Band-Aid and Live Aid, is absent from the honours list. The Liberal leader, David Steel, said he was very surprised Geldof had been left out. Perhaps he ruffled too many feathers, he said. Bradford MP Tom Tawney said Geldof deserved a knighthood and he'd be writing to the Prime Minister. And Radio 1 DJ Simon Bates, who recently visited Africa, said it was a slap in the face for all those who performed at Live Aid and all those who gave. Bob Geldof's efforts have raised £16 million for the starving in Africa. Today, a Band-Aid spokesman said we're in the business of saving lives, not winning awards. Downing Street have made it clear that New Year honours go to those who help Britain and the Commonwealth, rather than other countries. Though the fact that Geldof is an Irish citizen would not necessarily bar him from an award. They say this year's honours are solid and traditional. Awards go to 5 heroes of the fire at the Bradford City football ground, in which 56 people died. They include a British Empire Medal for Joseph Grieg, a fireman who, despite broken ribs, continued his efforts to rescue those trapped by the flames. And there's an OBE for David Sharp, the plastic surgeon who led a team treating scores of spectators who'd suffered severe burns. The only new life peer is Sir Frederick Dainton, Chancellor of Sheffield University and a world-famous scientist. In the world of entertainment, the actress and comedienne Beryl Reid is awarded an OBE. And the opera singer Gwyneth Jones is made a Dame of the British Empire. There are some famous sporting names too. England and Southampton goalkeeper Peter Shilton gets an MBE. So does John Frankham, the most successful jockey in National Hunt racing, who retired this year. The athlete Steve Cram this summer broke 3 world records in 19 days.
The world record holder at 1,500 metres majestically comes striding away.
Steve Cram is awarded an MBE for his services to athletics. And Liz Hobbs, twice the World Women's Water Ski champion, is also awarded an MBE. A serious accident kept her off her skis for some time, but she's determined to regain her British and European titles in 1986.
Bob Geldof did receive 2 awards today from BBC radio listeners. He was voted Man of the Year on the Today programme on Radio 4, and listeners to the World Service programme Outlook elected him Person of the Year. He said he was flattered beyond belief. The baby food manufacturers Farley said tonight that traces of salmonella have been found in their factory in Kendal. Government scientists have been carrying out tests there after an outbreak of food poisoning among young babies. Earlier this month, Farley's agreed to withdraw 3 of their brands from the shops.
Laboratory tests by public health technicians found traces of salmonella in dust taken from a cleaning machine at Farley's Kendal factory. The plant's been shut down since the outbreak began, and exhaustive tests have been carried out on all the staff and equipment there. No salmonella bacteria has yet been found in any Farley product, although the companies say it will be some time before they reopen the factory. Farley's Osterfeed and Ostermilk brands have been withdrawn, as well as the Complan milk diet. It's thought a quarter of all bottle-fed babies in Britain use these foods. Since November, 43 babies have been taken ill with salmonella poisoning, and 1 has died. Farley still don't know how salmonella got into their factory.
We actually carry out thousands of tests a year and spend about £1 million a year on quality control, and at this stage we believe this is a freak incident.
What do you intend doing about the situation in your factory now?
Well, we're working 24 hours a day with the Department of Health at the moment in the factory, and looking for ways to make sure that we eliminate this happening again.
The company says their factory at Kendal is now being thoroughly checked for any further traces of salmonella bacteria.
In South Africa, Winnie Mandela has been freed on bail of about £140 after her arrest near Johannesburg. A condition of her bail is that she stays out of the Johannesburg area. It isn't clear whether she'll continue to defy the law by trying to return to her home in Soweto.
It was the second time in 8 days Mrs. Mandela was brought to court for going back home to Soweto. Not much went right for the police. They couldn't close the courtroom door so the cameramen could snatch pictures of Mrs. Mandela's latest confrontation with the state, from which she was again set free. This time, she refused to let anybody know what she would do.
I'm just going to consult with my attorney, gentlemen. Will you just give me that opportunity, please?
In court, her lawyers said she had no home but Soweto. Her life was in danger if she went into internal exile elsewhere. The convoy took the road for Soweto, but swung off into Kagiso township, where she could legally go. It pulled up outside the home of Aubrey Mokoena, one of her oldest friends. It was to be a refuge where she and her lawyers could work out what to do next. Outside, the crowd had begun to turn into a demonstration. It wasn't long before the police arrived and a by now familiar confrontation developed.
Depart from this place.
Please wait a bit.
Within 3 minutes, you commit offense. It's now 2:36.
The crowd dispersed. We were arrested. There appeared no legal reason. We were eventually released. An appropriate way to end a year reporting South Africa. It's been a year of funerals. These last, the victims of the terrorist bomb last week, planted in a shopping centre outside Durban. Irma Bencini, a deeply committed Christian, had been doing her Christmas shopping. Her funeral was a sombre and moving affair, sadness and the sense of waste this sort of violence brings.
Of the Lord Jesus Christ.
And a final gesture from her husband, the blood-stained handbag she'd been carrying when she died, placed on the coffin.
And on Christmas Day, as I prayed, I felt impressed in my spirit.
More than 1,000 have died in violence here, in South Africa's worst year.
As she waits on her Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ.
Michael Burke reporting. Gunmen have tried to kill the Lebanese President Amin Gemayel. The assassination attempt on President Gemayel has sparked some of the worst fighting seen between rival Christian groups in Beirut for 5 years. The president's Mercedes came under heavy gunfire in a street in northern Beirut, but he wasn't in the car at the time. 6 of his bodyguards were wounded. It's thought the ambush may have been an attempt to wreck the peace agreement signed by rival Lebanese militias last Saturday. America has said Libya can't escape blame for the killings at Rome and Vienna airports. The extremist Palestinian leader Abu Nidal has the backing of Colonel Gaddafi, and his followers, who claim to have carried out last week's attacks, have bases in Libya. The White House spokesman, Larry Speakes, has given support to any Israeli retaliation for the assaults. He said every government had the right to seek out and punish terrorists wherever they may hide. The Egyptians were quick in condemning the United States' support for reprisals. The Foreign Minister, Boutros Ghali, said that violence did not justify violence. Revenge action would only damage the peace process throughout the Middle East. And the PLO leader Yasser Arafat accused America of being the center of aggression against Palestinians. More than 200 Ulster Unionist supporters left Londonderry on a protest march against the new Anglo-Irish agreement. At their head, most of the 15 Unionist MPs who resigned their seats at Westminster to fight by-elections on the issue. This is seen as a curtain-raiser to their campaign, 5 days of marching the 80 or so miles to Belfast for a rally there next Saturday. The European consortium planning a rescue package for Westland helicopters has warned the company against accepting the rival bid from the American firm Sikorsky. Members of the European consortium met in London today to finalise their package. They have the backing of Defence Secretary Michael Heseltine, who's reported to be ready to stake his cabinet post on making sure the European bid succeeds.
The letter for Westland shareholders was drawn up in London, but it was the Europeans, French, Italians and Germans, who insisted on a get tough paragraph, warning that if Westland went with the Americans, they couldn't expect to share in European projects.
Well, what they are saying, and the paragraph which we put in, is just to make it abundantly clear that if the UTC proposal goes ahead, as far as they are concerned, Westland will not participate with them in the NH-90, that's the medium-sized helicopter, nor the battlefield helicopter, which are the two key helicopters for the 1990s.
And that is something which has come again today strongly from the Europeans.
It has indeed, yes. What they feel in actual fact is that you can't have Westland sitting in both camps. They can't be on both sides. They've got to make up their mind which side they wish to be on.
Tonight, the European consortium appear to believe that their offer will be much more attractive to the shareholders, provided, that is, they have a chance to study it in detail, which is why, in the letter going tonight to Westland, they've asked for the extraordinary general meeting in 2 weeks' time to be adjourned to give shareholders longer to consider.
A 13-year-old boy who's been campaigning for kidney sufferers is now the subject of an appeal to give him the chance of a new life. Oliver Broderick has a rare blood group and has already had one kidney transplant that's failed. His parents fear time could be running out. In the last few days, he's twice been in a coma.
Oliver Broderick became well known after appearing in the Children in Need film on television earlier this month. For 2 years now, he's been treated twice a week on a kidney machine. Like more than 90 other children in Britain, he's waiting for a kidney transplant. He's already had one which failed. And because of this and the many blood transfusions he's had, his body will now reject most kidneys. His doctors believe only 1 in 1,000 kidneys, which might become available from a donor, would be compatible. His need is urgent. Just before Christmas, complications set in.
Just recently, before Christmas, he went into a coma, quite suddenly, the day after dialysis. And that, I'm afraid, put a great scare into the whole family, because he was unconscious for 24 hours.
So it's urgent he gets a new kidney as soon as possible?
Yes, it is.
This evening, as Oliver went home after yet another turn on the kidney machine, his parents appealed for people to remember the needs of children like Oliver. A new kidney could save his life.
And 2 men, both paralysed from the chest down, have been on a sponsored walk in London to raise money for Live Aid. It was made possible because of an all-British invention, bionic legs. 5 years ago, Martin Sullivan broke his back in a car crash. His fellow walker, David Rusling, was paralysed when he was crushed by a tree. Both were walking again today thanks to a special harness designed and developed at an orthopaedic research centre in Shropshire.
In the 50s, the aim was to do a mile in 4 minutes. So my aim is to do 100 metres in 4 minutes.
And indeed he did. Well, that's all from me for now. The next news on BBC1 is at 9:05.
Hello. For many of us, a bright start to 1986. Still a lot of rain about, though, coming in from the west, and this front will spread more rain into southwestern parts of Britain during the course of tomorrow. Still quite a number of showers about tonight, the odd heavy one too, hail and thunder in a few places, some sleet as well in the southeast and in the northeast of Britain. Most of these showers, though, dying away during the night, some patches of fog and ice later on. Because it's a fairly chilly night, -1, just 30 Fahrenheit, as promised. A pretty bright start to tomorrow with a little sunshine. Still some sleet in the far north of Scotland, still the odd coastal shower. During the morning, though, rain getting into the southwest, and as the day goes on, that rain getting into many parts of Northern Ireland, Wales, the southwest Midlands and southern England too. Quite heavy rain as well in places. Though temperatures not too bad for early January. 5 is 41, 7 is 45 Fahrenheit. Let me finish up, though, with a summary of tomorrow's weather. A bright start, but rain gradually moving into southwestern parts of Britain during the course of the day. That's it. Have a good evening.
There's a delightful confection from rural Darl on BBC2 now, when young Charlie Bucket receives his just desserts by winning a ticket to visit the sugary mountains of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Here on One in a moment, there's a sticky problem for some EastEnders.
There's a full lineup of entertainment for New Year's Eve on BBC1. There's all-star Western adventure at 7 o'clock, The Magnificent Seven, led by Yul Brynner. At 9:20, Terence Rattigan's The Browning version, starring Ian Holm and Judi Dench.
What do they expect you to live on? My money, I suppose.
There has never been any question of that. I shall be perfectly able to support myself.
Yourself? Doesn't the marriage service say something about the husband supporting the wife, doesn't it? You ought to know.
At 10:35, a classic Christmas Steptoe and Son.
Looks nice, doesn't it?
I can hardly contain my gasps of wonder and amazement. Ooh!
And at 11:15...
Hello, to take us ranting and raving into the new year with Ronnie Corbett, David Jason, Kenneth Williams, Julie Walters, Barry McGuigan, not so much as the bony Scottish need to be seen. See you at 11:15.
At 12:15, an exuberant start to 1986 with 7 brides for 7 brothers. A classic lineup of entertainment for New Year's Eve, here on BBC1.
Now, a clue to a missing resident of Albert Square arrives in the mail of one of the EastEnders.